Testing, testing, testing. Yeah. Fetching, fetching stream, fetching stream. Hmm. Fetching stream, taking its time. There we go. There's one. And I think two is coming. I think so. There it is. There's two. All right. Hey, everybody. This is Jacquie Luqman. It's been a few days since I have been on live. It's been really, really busy, politically, socially, personally. It's been crazy. It's been kind of a train wreck. Um, but I wanted to take a few minutes to reflect on some of the issues that I'm having, because I'm always having issues with the current discourse. But I'm going to take a couple minutes just to chill and let you guys hop on. Hey, everybody over at We Are the Media. Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry I haven't been on for very long, but things have been nuts, haven't they? So I just want to talk about some of those things. Hey, Christina. And I'm trying to be on a couple of platforms. So if I miss you, it's only because I'm platform hopping from one platform to another. And let me know if you have any audio issues, y'all, so I can make sure to fix those as we go along. All right, I'm gonna hop out of there. Hey, great. And I am going to hop out of there and try this. Try to keep up a little better. This way. That might not be the best way either, but we'll see. We'll see. So I've been watching the news just like everybody else has, and I've been really I'm not going to say shocked, because I'm not going to lie, you guys. I'm not going to sit here and say that the things that I've seen come out of the Trump administration have been horrifying to me. It's none of it's horrifying to me. And I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be some type of guru. I'm not trying to be all zen about it. I mean, this really isn't new to a lot of people. This kind of political abuse is not. This is stuff that people have lived with for decades. I mean, this kind of stuff is only new to people, honestly. And please don't take offense. This kind of stuff is new to people who have not been paying attention all this time. I'm just going to say that. And I think I've said before that I think that is true of too many people who are new to this political movement, whether it's through Bernie Sanders or through whatever other means they've just become involved. But a lot of people are just not aware how long this kind of political brinksmanship has been going on. This is not something that Donald Trump just thought up, that he just decided to do, especially with this budget. He's not especially evil in the things that he's trying to do with this budget. Donald Trump and this budget and all of his legislation to date, or his attempted legislation, mostly his executive orders, because he honestly hasn't produced a lot of legislation that has been voted on. What he's done was governed by fiat, which, if you recall, that's what Barack Obama was accused of doing. But all of his executive orders are either continuations of Obama policies, of Obama administration policies, a slight tweak in some of those policies, like the travel ban. I think he added a country, and he made it indefinite, whereas during the Obama administration, the same countries were a part of that travel restriction under Obama, but it was a temporary ban. You see what I'm saying? So, Donald Trump isn't like recreating the wheel of political evil here. He's just not. He's only doing, extending some of what's already been done that we honestly didn't pay any attention to because it was the Democrats in office. And because we feel like they're not so bad, so we kind of let them slide a little bit. And also, Donald Trump is doing what the Republican long plan was for decades. This was their game plan. The outcome of whatever these policies of his are, it was their game plan. And it's been their game plan for a long time. What's bothersome to me is that so many people have underestimated the GOP, especially the Tea Party, wing of the GOP. For years, people have dismissed the Tea Party wing of the GOP as a bunch of, crazy, fringe, racist whack jobs who wanna just shut down government and never have any government again, and that's how they're going to make America better. But the mistake we on the left, whether you call yourself a Democrat, whether you call yourself a liberal, whether you call yourself a progressive, whatever it is, we on the left, the mistake we make is always underestimating our enemies. We always underestimate them and assume that they just don't know what they're doing, that they're just a bunch of stupid, ignorant people, when in fact these people have had a plan all along that they didn't even make secret. I can't even call it a conspiracy because they did it right in the open. It's just that our problem on the left sometime is that we get caught up in our own hype about how much better people we are than they are. And we look down our noses at them and we just dismiss the things that they're doing and say, well, that's not going to amount to anything because they're stupid and evil. Well, the Tea Party, in effect, did what the left needs to do. As far as strategy is concerned, the Tea Party started by focusing on small local elections, filling those small local dog catcher, alderman, I guess, city council, tax assessor. Who controls the value that is assessed of property? That's an incredibly powerful position. Ask the people in Detroit how powerful the tax assessor is. All of those little elections and appointments, those seemingly insignificant offices in cities and states and counties and townships that the major political parties ignore, that's where the Tea Party focused first. So they put people who share their ideology, who wanted their political agenda to be spread to higher offices of government. They got the confidence of the people that they served, so they must not have been completely insane. They weren't doing wackadoodle crazy things while they were in office. Maybe not at first. Now, some of those people were just some of those people were racist, and we saw what happened when you had some Tea Party members take a majority of the positions on a school board. I think it was in Texas somewhere, and they changed the language of the textbooks in regard to slavery and Native people. Yeah, that's a horrible thing that they did. But look at the flip side of it. They were able to have that much influence on the culture of this country by focusing on those small local elections that the major parties ignore. So that's how they gain the trust of the people that they serve. Not everybody, but they weren't trying to serve everybody. They were trying to attract people who had their ideologies, who shared their ideologies, to convince those people to vote for them, to push politicians for state legislature, for mayor, for Congress, and eventually for president, who shared their political views. That's what grassroots is. You work from the ground up. The Tea Party is the latest in the successful model of how that works. The outcome has been horrific. Absolutely true. But we're not talking about outcomes. We're talking about strategy, how they did it. But because those of us on the left, we never want to give our so-called enemies any credit for anything, we won't even look at the fact that they accomplished what it is we're falling over ourselves, tripping over ourselves, unable to do. But we're supposedly morally better than they are. So I've been looking at people responding, reacting to the latest tweet storms, the latest legislation and policy foolishness from Trump. And, I've been seeing people become just more and more outraged, horrified, terrified, and, everybody's screaming, revolution, we need a revolution now. Let me tell you something about revolution. That is, and it's a very uncomfortable thing for many of you to hear. And it'll probably make me terribly unpopular very quickly. But it's the truth. Y'all don't want a revolution. You really don't. What you want is for something to happen so that you're not afraid of your government anymore. Because now you're suddenly afraid of your government. And that's new to you. That's very new to you. But see, that's not new to most of us. Most of us people of color, most of us Native American people, most of us LGBTQIA people, most people who have been disenfranchised and marginalized in this country, being afraid of our government ain't nothing new. And I was reflecting yesterday on just how terrified Black people have been of our government the past 2 days, actually, because yesterday was the anniversary of the murder of Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was the chairman of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Fred Hampton was 21 years old when he was murdered by the Chicago police. What was Fred Hampton doing at 21? Fred Hampton taken over the Black Panther Party because the former chairman was also in jail. Took over the Black Panther Party and continued organizational efforts to feed poor people, to clothe poor people, to provide health care to poor people in Black neighborhoods. And then he reached out to other communities of poor people, white people, Latinos, Native Americans. And he said to them, listen, this is our struggle. And this is how we're struggling. And this is how we're winning, because we're feeding our people and we are gaining some political education. We're educating our people. We're teaching them how this system works and how they can fight this system as they grow in years and maturity, and they can grow this movement. Why don't you do the same thing, help us with our struggle, and then you copy this model among your people? That's what he did. That's what the Black Panther Party did. They took the foundation of all liberation struggle in this country, which was the struggle for liberation for black people, and they replicated it to poor white people, to Native American people, to Hispanic people, to every group of oppressed people that was being mistreated by the government. And people were responding to that. The Black Panther Party was the genesis of the Rainbow Coalition. Most of you know about the Rainbow Coalition through Jesse Jackson's presidential bid. But Jesse Jackson got the Rainbow Coalition idea from the Black Panther Party. That's where it started. And the Rainbow Coalition was a coalition of black people, Native people, white people, Asian people, Hispanic people, disabled people, fighting against an evil system that was oppressing all of us, using black liberation as the foundation for that revolution. That's what the Rainbow Coalition was. Fred Hampton, at 21 years old, recognized that even though for black people, our struggle is very much based on race and racism, for other people, their struggle is based on class. And you can't fight against one without fighting against the other. You can't say that you're going to wage a class struggle without recognizing the racial component to that class struggle, because capitalism can't exist to crush people without creating racism and classism. Because capitalism needs people to oppress. Capitalism must always have an oppressor class in order to be successful, in order to thrive and to grow. And it creates that oppressor class through racism, yes, and also through classism. So Fred Hampton at 21 years old, 21, what were you doing at 21? Let me tell you what I was doing at 21. I was getting drunk at 21. I was. So please don't think that Jacqueline is sitting here saying that I have been a revolutionary all of my little life. Oh no, I was out partying and going to shows at the 930 Club and getting drunk at 21. Fred Hampton was growing a revolution at 21 years old. And as a part of that revolution, he held political education classes. The Black Panther Party did that all over the country wherever they had an office. A key component to any revolution is education. I know that what we want, I know that what we really want to do is have like the French Revolution tomorrow, right? To have everybody out in the streets with pitchforks and, you know, throwing Molotov cocktails and you know, off with their heads and eating the rich like by Friday. And then by Monday, everything is, you know, we're setting up our alternative government. Y'all, that's not how it's going to work. I researched the Cuban Revolution under Fidel Castro. And I did not know that before he even gave one peasant one gun to fight, to literally drive the rich out of Havana, Castro spent decades educating peasants, poor people, the poor farmers of Cuba who were being taken advantage of by the multinational corporations, mostly American-based corporations that were the owners of the plantations in Cuba. He spent decades educating those peasants on government, policy, military, history, as well as the history of Cuba. You can't have a revolution without a people who have no knowledge of what came before them, what led to the revolution. You can't have a revolution with a bunch of people who don't understand why they need a revolution. And you also can't have a revolution with people who believe that the only reason they need a revolution is because they're the ones hurting right now. That's in that case, to me, that's not a revolution when you feel like you need to act on your behalf because you're hurting right now. No, that's like a hijack. That's, you're sticking somebody up in that case, which might not be a bad thing, but it's an incomplete action. It's an incomplete and what's the other word I'm looking for? It's an insufficient response to the problem as it has always existed. Now I know that some people are just really freaked out because they're like, well, oh my God, when is something gonna happen? Let me tell you, I think when something is going to happen, when people realize that this is much bigger than them. Right? People understand who have not been political before that something's wrong with our government. People finally get something's wrong with our government. But people are looking at the something being wrong only in the frame of reference of how it's going to affect them individually. And that's terrifying enough. I get that it's terrifying enough. Hey, Pete, I see you over there. Hey, Lynn. Hey, Michelle. And Diana, hello, Michael. I get, and I'm not at all telling you all that you shouldn't be terrified. I can't. If you believed your government was fair and impartial and acted in your best interests at least 60% of the time before this, I can completely understand how seeing everything unfold the way it has unfolded, people being completely freaked out and shocked because your reality has been not only challenged, but your reality has been torched and burned to the ground. This is our government we're talking about. This is the government that is supposed to be of the people, for the people, and by the people, and it is supposed to protect the interests of the people. We're just learning now, just all of it's just being laid bare. They're not even pretending anymore that the government is not of us, it's not for us, and it's not by us. Nope, not anymore. And it doesn't care to protect us. I understand that that's a very difficult thing to reconcile in your understanding of what this country is. The problem is you've got to move on from that terror at some point and start to do the work of the thing that you want, which is revolution. And one of those things, one part of that work that has to be done is to connect what you are experiencing today with what other groups of people have been experiencing for decades. Those connections must be made. You see, this is why this information, these connections being so important, are why so much of this history that I'm talking about all the time was never taught in schools. Nobody wanted you to know. Nobody wanted you to know that the Chicago Police Department murdered Fred Hampton and his pregnant girlfriend and another member of the Black Panther Party in their apartment, in their bed, while they slept. No, nobody wanted you to know that, because you'd be appalled that the police department, any police department, would conduct themselves in such a way. Wouldn't you? Sure. Unless, of course, the narrative had to be put out first that the Black Panther Party and the members of the Black Panther Party were radicals and they were violent and they were anti-cop and they hated white people and they wanted to overthrow the government. Well, if you've got that narrative out there first, then what do you care that the law enforcement arm of the state murdered unarmed people in the middle of the night as they slept? And when you learn that the Chicago Police Department did this to Fred Hampton, then the abuses of the Chicago Police Department and the Philadelphia Police Department and the Ferguson Police Department and the Cincinnati Police Department and the DC Police Department and the Los Angeles Police Department and every police department that has a history of abuse and mistreatment, especially of people of color, then it starts to make a little bit more sense when you make that connection. If the police in Chicago were okay with murdering unarmed citizens in their sleep, murdering a pregnant woman and another unarmed man as they slept, and actually walking out of the apartment building holding the stretcher with Fred Hampton's bullet-ridden body with smiles on their faces, like he was a big game trophy that they just bagged, doesn't it make a little bit more sense now that there might be an anti-black, anti-activist bias that is encouraged in police departments across this country, because at the same time it was the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover that said they had to make sure that a black messiah never rose to lead the people, and if one did, it would be one that they chose. See, these things are important because they put the present horrors in historical context. Now, does that make you feel better? Well, no, it shouldn't make you feel better. It should make you even more horrified. But it also should make you more committed to addressing the actual problems, as opposed to responding because you are individually afraid right now. Because so what will happen is, and what I'm seeing happen, is that people are afraid that income inequality all by itself is not being addressed. And healthcare, Medicare for all, or universal healthcare is being denied. And people want to address these things, and they want to provide these things, and they want to attack these things. And these are noble issues to address. They're problems that must be addressed, absolutely. At the same time, that kind of entrenched anti-agitation, anti-dissent, anti-black, state-sponsored violence that has existed against certain people in this country, that never gets addressed while you're focusing on Medicare for all and income inequality. So you see, class issues are absolutely important, but race issues are the bedrock of many of these problems. And if you think it's just us, what about the Native Americans? I understand that people are outraged at what Donald Trump just did by scaling back the size of the Bears Ears monument and the other monument. Bears Ears, I think, by 90%, and the other monument by 45%. All so that private developers can go in there, take the Native Americans' land and drill for oil and just sully their pristine and sacred land and make money off of it. They're not going to give Native people. I understand that people are outraged at that. And you should be, because it's vile and it's disgusting. It is an absolute sacrilege to the history and the heritage of Native people. But you can't just be outraged at that. You see, you can't just be outraged at Standing Rock either. As outrageous as Standing Rock was, you have to understand that there is an historical political context for this that extends beyond the atrocity from yesterday, from the rape of the historic monument lands, and that extends beyond Standing Rock from last year. We're talking about when Alcatraz prison was abandoned, was closed. It was Native Americans who, operating under a treaty from 1868, said, we are going to claim this surplus government land, because there is actually a treaty that was made between the United States government and Native people that said Native people could claim use of excess government land. So California Native Americans occupied Alcatraz. They wanted to turn Alcatraz Island into a cultural center and a school. Now again, remember, they have a treaty. They had a treaty. So they were operating under good faith of the treaty. And they operated Alcatraz Island for over a year. And things were going well. People were supportive of them. But the government under Richard Nixon completely ignored them. Did not want to negotiate with them, tried to negotiate with them, but the Native Americans would accept nothing less of Alcatraz Island and complete control of it for their purposes. Federal government under Nixon would not give it to them. So the Native people rightfully stayed. And all that happened, unfortunately, was that many of the students who had come to join the occupation couldn't stay because they had to go back to school. Then you had white people coming to hang out, claiming that they were helping, taking advantage of the generosity of the Native people. Sound familiar? Taking advantage of the generosity of the Native people. The Native people had to clean up after them. The white people were making a mess. They were bringing drugs and alcohol into Alcatraz, which were strictly forbidden by the Native communities. And eventually things just fell apart. There was infiltration by the government. And then in 1971, I think the government came in and pulled the last remnants of the Native occupiers, the Native standoff members, the Native resistance members. I was looking for the right word. Because they can't occupy what's theirs. The government came in and pulled the last group of them out. Not once did the government honor that treaty. And the government has never honored any of the treaties that it has made with Native people. Native people acting in good faith. We have this document that says we can do this, and the government looks at Native people in that document and says, well, screw you, we're not doing it. So how are you appalled? How are you shocked? Why would you think this government would deal honestly and justly and with honor with Native people in regard to their land when this government has never dealt that way with them? When you understand that these issues go beyond Standing Rock, these issues go centuries back. This executive order from Trump stealing more land from Native people, this ought not to be a surprise for you, but it ought to cause you to want to know, how far does this go back and how do we change this? How do we address it? Fine, fight for Standing Rock. Absolutely fight for the pipeline not to go through Standing Rock. Absolutely fight for Native monument grounds to be restored. But what else are you going to fight for on behalf of Native people? Because it's not just land and the theft of their land that they've been struggling with. So what else are you willing to fight on behalf of Native people for that doesn't have to do with the popular activist efforts that are passed around on social media? Because you know, tuberculosis is still the #1 killer of children on reservations. Tuberculosis. Diabetes. Astronomical rates of diabetes on reservations. Why poor health care? Why poor diet? Unemployment, astronomical. Oh, we're going through the whole Me Too sexual assault rape thing. Rape among Native American women and many that are committed by white men who cannot be tried in tribal councils that is another kind of level of crime in itself. Are we being revolutionaries and fighting on behalf of those people on those issues? Or are we doing what a whole lot of people, a whole lot of white people do we hop on the latest popular hashtag and run to a location where we can get some live streams and get some likes, get some exposure, and get some people to give us some money so we can travel to the next hot activist spot. Is that what we're doing? That's what happened with Alcatraz. Alcatraz got popular. And then people wanted to go be a part of it rather than to help those people get back their land. What kind of revolution do you want? Because I'm trying to tell you, as much as we all like a little bit of attention, I do too. I do too. As much as we all like attention, most of the work revolutionaries do, nobody ever sees. It's not celebrated. It's not heralded. The only reason anybody's getting any kind of attention now is because social media is a thing. And it's a very powerful tool. There is no way that I'm not going to use social media to educate people about the history of this revolution. That's right. This revolution never ended. There's always been a revolution. It ebbs and flows. It goes and fits and starts. It grows. It shrinks. Some of us have been fighting this revolution all of our lives. There are organizations in cities, in New York City, in Newark, New Jersey, in Chicago, down in Atlanta, down in Mississippi, in other cities. We know people who are holding teach-ins for the community to teach people about political education, to learn about the history of how we got here. Because understanding the history of how we got here is the only way we are going to fight to make sure we don't stay here. And here's the thing that I understand is very, very difficult for people to grasp. This isn't going to happen overnight. Trump is going to continue to do some really terrible things. He is. He is. He doesn't have a better angel. For all of my Christian friends, brothers and sisters who want to keep praying and appeal to the better angels of these people don't have better angels. And I know that because I understand that as appalled as people are about Roy Moore being a serious contender for anything, for dog catcher, I also understand how the moral majority manipulated and used the Christian community to advance their political agenda. So it's not a surprise to me that you got a bunch of Christians or people who call themselves Christians celebrating Roy Moore, endorsing him, saying, oh, Roy Moore is a man of God. That's not a surprise. These are the same people who called Oliver North a hero. Oliver North, who was a player, a major figure in the Iran-Contra scandal, who destroyed documents that protected Reagan and the CIA, destroyed that paper trail to keep the world from finding out, we eventually did, that it was the CIA that was involved in trafficking cocaine that flooded Black and Latino communities with crack and guns, and the money from those proceeds went to arm the freedom fighters in Nicaragua that Reagan's administration backed. Yeah, our people were sold out for freedom, for democracy in Nicaragua, and Oliver North was a major player in that. He shredded many, many documents covering that up. But there were plenty of Christians who thought that what he did was a good thing because he was protecting democracy. It didn't matter that what he did was illegal. It didn't even matter that what he did was amoral. It didn't matter what the fallout was for us. It didn't matter what the fallout was in the barrio. The only thing that mattered to many of these politically conservative Christians, most of whom were white, was that he acted on behalf of democracy and America. That's the only thing that matters to some of these people. So no, they don't have any better angels to appeal to. These are the same people who took the side of Jerry Falwell when Falwell and his minions defended Bob Jones University in a case against the United States government, namely the IRS, because the IRS was about to rescind Bob Jones University's tax-exempt status. Jerry Falwell framed that move as the government waging war against religious institutions, and that's where the idea of the government not liking religious freedom came from. But the truth was, the IRS was going to rescind Bob Jones University's tax-exempt status because of a racially discriminatory policy that Bob Jones University had. Black students were not allowed to date white students. Now, when Jerry Falwell and his evil cabal of liars looked at the situation, they said, this is the perfect way for us to get this massive voting block of believers behind our political agenda. And our political agenda is we want to stem this tide of feminism, we want to stem this tide of gay rights, and we want to end abortion being legal. They had been trying to convince people of faith to latch on to those issues for decades before. Christians didn't care. All of a sudden, Bob Jones University hires Jerry Falwell and a bunch of other conservative Christian attorneys to defend them against the IRS to try to keep their tax-exempt status because they were going to lose it because of their racist policies. Christians didn't care that Bob Jones University's policies were racist. They didn't care about the impact that had on black people, on potential black students. They didn't even care how that looked from a Christian perspective. Why would you even do that if you're a Christian? No, they only cared that they appeared to be persecuted by the United States government for not exercising their religious freedom or not being allowed to exercise their religious freedom. That's where that came from. So Roy Moore, he doesn't exist in some weird alternate universe vacuum. Roy Moore exists because this is exactly what the politically conservative Christian cabal wanted. They have planned this for decades. They have sent their students, their children, to Liberty University and other Christian conservative colleges and have indoctrinated them on the politically conservative view of the Bible. And those people have graduated from those colleges and they've gotten jobs in the government. And us prayerful and forgiving and ever loving black Christians, we just pray that God is going to work it all out and believe everything these people tell us about our faith. Many of us don't push back. Many of us have them in our church. We repeat their sermons. We tell our children what they tell us is right and wrong. And then we have people like Roy Moore visiting a black church and a bunch of black church members cheering him on. Oh, praise the Lord. None of that stuff happens out of a vacuum. It was planned. Very, very carefully planned. But the only way it can work is if people remain uneducated about the plan. And that's been the problem of not just Christians, black Christians in particular, who I'm particularly mad at these days, but white people in general. Because for years, so many black revolutionaries and native revolutionaries and gay revolutionaries have tried to tell you that this government, the one we have now, that's what it's always been. They're not your friends. They don't care about you, Republicans or Democrats. There are problems that we need to address that we're ignoring because we like this particular person in office. But because we like this particular person in office, we're ignoring the policies that these people have passed that have harmed particular groups of people, and we haven't cared about them because we weren't members of those groups of people. Like when we still think Bill Clinton was a great president, despite the fact that he passed the Telecommunications Act that set the stage for the media consolidation we have now. Like the fact that he and Biden and his wife and Hillary Clinton campaigned for and passed the 1994 crime bill that absolutely decimated Black and Latino communities. That his inaction in Rwanda. But he's still a great president. Why? Because he's a Democrat. And too many people who are now calling for a revolution, who want a revolution, you either think all Democrats are evil, they're not. But you either think all Democrats are evil and the answer is that we just need to blow up both parties, but then you've got people who are angry at people who voted third party because they should have voted for the Democrats. And neither one of you actually want to do any research into how we got here. Because it is the fault of both parties. And some of the people responsible are some people who we love very dearly, like Jimmy Carter. You're going to have to watch my series on neoliberalism to understand what I mean. I was shocked when I found out myself. But we have to not be afraid to learn these things. Because when you have an uneducated, when you have a revolution that's run by uneducated people, eventually what you'll have is a dictatorship. What you'll have is a bunch of people who will elect a despot. And that's not what we want. It's interesting. I had to remember to write this note that we forget that during the Obama administration, he cut food stamps by $8.7 billion. 850,000 families lost $90 a month. $90 a month. Under Obama. He dropped 500 bombs on Africa. Over 24,000 bombs during his administration in the Middle East. Instead of pushing for universal health care, or at least health care with a public option, he tried too hard to compromise with people who made it very clear the first day he was sworn into office that they were not going to work with him. You remember that? You remember that conference call that McConnell had? We are going to make sure that the president's agenda fails. And as much as we wanted to give him a chance and give President Obama the benefit of the doubt because we understood that he was working with pure obstructionists and many racists who hated him because he's racist, we have to be honest that a lot of the problems we have now were started by him. But we didn't want a revolution then. And I wonder why. When our government, regardless of who is the figurehead of it, bails out corporations but does not bail out individual Americans, why aren't we demanding a revolution then? Popularity. It's popularity. Nobody wants to appear going against the guy everybody likes. And the guy that some people hate because he's black. I understand that's a sticky situation, but this is our future we're talking about. So, in the context of fighting for our future, in the text of what we want to base this revolution on, no criticism of any politician is off the table. None. Because we cannot formulate solutions based on half-truths. We can't. I see this among some progressives who get angry when people criticize Bernie Sanders. You can't say anything bad about Sanders or else you're really not part of the revolution. No, you're not part of the revolution if you're not willing to admit that there were some things that Bernie Sanders actually did do wrong. That we need to make sure whomever runs again to oppose the Democratic nominee, the assumed Democratic nominee, to make sure that person doesn't make that mistake again. You can't be a revolutionary if you want to pull some punches because you like this candidate. It gets people killed. I mean that literally, it has gotten people killed. And this is our lives at stake here. I hope that most of you realize now, more than you realized at any other time in the history of this country, whether you've been political before now or not, I hope that what's going on now forces you to realize that it's our lives at stake here. See, now it's yours. Now it's your lives at stake here. But when you look at how our government has dealt with members of the American Indian movement, with Russell Means probably going to die in prison, with 40 members of the Black Panther Party still in prison, some of them who have been in solitary confinement for decades. Why? Because they wanted freedom and liberation from an oppressive government. When you know that your history includes members of the military and members of law enforcement participating in race riots against black communities, white people rioting and destroying black communities and murdering people in the summer of 1919 because black people had a nerve to come back from World War I and expect to be treated like American citizens with decent jobs and decent homes. When you know that this is the way your government treats you, you understand that revolution is not just a popular phrase to throw around on social media to get people to like you. Revolution is life for many of us. Many of us have lost our livelihoods, we've lost homes, we've lost friends, we've lost family, lost our lives to this revolution that we can't give up. Because if we give up, we all die. That's not an understatement. I'm not being hyperbolic. Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, and yes, black people will be used to take out leaders in revolutionary black movements. Yes, they will be. Because some of us don't have better angels or moral compass either. Some of us can be bought. This is life and death for us, and it has been since we've been here. So explain to me, progressives and liberals, and you conservatives who are pissed off about what's going on too, because I know that many of you are. You socialists or whatever it is you call yourselves. Y'all sitting on the sidelines. You Christians who are sitting there praying that the Lord is going to work all this out. Explain to me. Who do you think is going to man this revolution? Who are you praying for? I see people posting all of the time. Oh, we need to get out here with the pitchforks and the Molotov. Who's going to do it? Who? You? No, you're not. You're not. Because our government, right now, the J20 protesters are being tried in court, right now in D.C. The new age of crushing dissent is upon us. some pitchforks and some Molotov cocktails is going to stop that? No, we're beyond that. Not saying that there's not going to come a time for that. I'm sure it will be. But until then, this is the revolution for you. Here it is. Now listen carefully. I just happened to look down at the comments, and Riley said, how do we convince others who support corrupt individuals to move against systemic oppression? Here's the revolution for you, Riley. You become educated, and you surround yourselves with people who are educated, who are continuing to be educated on the revolutionary history that we need to know, and then invite other people to participate. And for those people who don't want to, because this is the other problem I see with so many people, y'all expect everybody to just follow along with you, to just agree with you just because everything makes sense to you. That has never happened in the history of humankind, and it's not going to start happening now. Not everybody is going to agree with you. This is not going to be a situation where, oh, everyone now sees how corrupt the government is, so everyone is going to be out in the streets. And no, that it's not going to happen, because that's the nature of people. Some people are just afraid, and that's fine. Some people don't feel like revolution is the way to do it, even though revolution means many different things. Some people might not like our tactics, and some people feel like there's nothing wrong and they benefit from the way. You need to let those people be and do whatever it is they feel. Leave those people alone. We don't have time to try to indoctrinate people who are resistant to wanting to be revolutionaries. Our job, I love this by Kwame Ture, our job is not to make the unconscious conscious. If you don't think there's anything bad going on, my job is not to convince you that there is. My job is to help the conscience learn what to do with this consciousness. Now that you realize there's a problem, what do you do with it? One of the things I'd like to leave you with is this piece of knowledge that I'm surprised that people didn't seize on, this whole third party focus. And we do need third parties. We need third, fifth, and 88th parties, I think. Here's the thing, though. Third parties aren't new. The Green Party, the Libertarian Party, they're not new. Third parties as a viable alternative is new, again, to people who have not previously paid much attention to politics. I don't know if you knew that there are currently over 200 recognizable or recognized political parties in this country today. Over 200. So it's not that we have a lack of third parties. The issue really is third parties having the resources to get their messages out to the population, and which third parties are recognized in what states. If we don't understand the landscape of the problem, we're never going to solve it. So, I'm not sure if any of what I said was helpful to anybody today. I'm going to read through some of the comments. Oh, look, I got a crown. Thank you, Daniela. Let's see. Trucido said, nope, too many are comfortable and not suffering enough. The payoffs aren't under control and the propaganda levels are at maximum. Propaganda. Yeah, people are angry at the level of propaganda that comes out of the mainstream media today. People are so focused on mainstream media. Mainstream media, they lie, blah, blah, blah. But that all started back in 1994 under Bill Clinton with the Telecommunications Act, where there was no longer a legislative baseline for community control of media outlets. That's when all that started. So we've been indoctrinated for 20 years, however long it's been since we've been fed a pack of lies as far as the media is concerned for that long, actually longer. So it's going to take some time to re-educate the masses to the truth. We're not going to do that in one election cycle. I'm sorry to tell y'all that, but we're not going to have this massive revolution in the next 4 years. Not the way you want it. Not the way you want it. The kind of revolution we are perfectly capable of having in the next 4 years is that Tea Party-like electoral revolution. Push independent, progressive candidates in the local elections. Elect those people to school board, dog catcher, sheriff, librarian, tax assessor, recorder of deeds. Put those people in those offices that have policies that are supportive of expanding opportunity and access to the least among us. That's how this revolution is going to gain its legs. So let me go over here and see what else you guys have to say. Oh, yeah, Brewski was protesting in the background because I was not paying attention to him. And his dog friend was outside, who I usually take outside to let him play with, but not today because I was talking to you. So, all right, I hope to be able to do this a little bit more frequently. I apologize for my absence. We are the media. But as I said, it's been really busy. Stay tuned. Stay informed. Don't believe everything someone tells you. Do the research. Everything I've told you in this live stream, I'll provide you links, but please do the research yourself. The history really is out there. You have not been taught it, but you need to know it in order for this revolution to grow the way it needs to be sustainable. Here's the last thing I'll leave with you. Once we do grow this revolution and implement whatever it is that it is going to manifest, I hope you know that a revolutionary's work is never, ever done. Never. Because you don't foment a revolution and then get to sit back and rest on your laurels and reap the benefits and rewards and say, ooh, look what I did. You have to always sustain the level of freedom that you've been able to supply, that you've been able to allow with that revolution. In other words, somebody's always going to challenge your revolution. So getting tired, it's not an option. So thanks a lot for listening to my ramblings today, y'all. Y'all have a great week. I think on Coffee, Current Events, and Politics, live in Luqman Nation, we will have a special guest tomorrow. I'm going to confirm that this afternoon, but stay tuned at 6 o'clock p.m. over on Coffee, Current Events, and Politics in Luqman Nation for our regular show on Wednesday night and on Sunday night as well. Find us on Patreon. Please consider becoming a patron. And also our GoFundMe. You can find us in both places under Luqman Nation, LuqManNation. We are on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. Thank you very much for joining me today. Have a great day. Be really good to each other. We desperately need that now. Peace.